Welcome to the video where a boring stick in the mud tells you how to live your life. If you can hear it, there's some construction going on right now, so you might hear that in the background noise. Appreciate you understanding. So at the time of this video's release, it is October, which means it is spooky time, it's Halloween time, and I think that's always exciting as a magician because it kind of gets people in the mood to see some tricks. Magic is mysterious and mystical seeming, and so even though it's illusion, it's sleight of hand, it kind of ties thematically into just what people are interested in during the time of Halloween. So if you haven't seen it, we did release a perfect Halloween trick that's super easy and impactful for people to see, which is a coin bend. So be sure to check out that tutorial if you haven't seen it yet. But for today, there's something I've been wanting to talk about for a while on this channel, which is the type of trick I will never do. And it's just going to be a little bit of a discussion video and also a word to the wise if you are in magic, especially as a hobbyist, but I think there's something for you as a professional too, just to be aware of. You may have seen the news last year when David Blaine had to, I think, pause his show for a time, or there was just this kind of event that kind of caught people's attention, which was when he had a dangerous trick go wrong. And this is something that's been on my mind for a while as a magician, especially as a magician who is an adult now, who grew up as a kid doing magic. There is a line I have drawn, which is to never do the type of trick David Blaine was doing. The specific trick I will never do as a magician is the spike trick. There are just too many stories of magicians getting the spike trick wrong. This is the trick where you have a number of cups or buckets or paper bags over a spike. One of them is over a spike, and then they're mixed around, and with the help of the audience, the magician is narrowing down to the last one so that they can avoid the peril of the spike. So it's kind of a mentalism trick, an intuition trick, and I don't deny its effectiveness when it goes right. First of all, involving the audience in that, in terms of putting the audience's hand over it, is a terrible idea. You should never do that. But even in the case of the performer putting their own hand and safety at risk, it's just something I will never do, especially as a hobbyist. But even if I were a professional performer in the sense of doing live shows, I'm just not going to go there. And so in the time of October, spooky tricks, I think dangerous tricks also is kind of like, I don't know, might be more on your mind as a magician. I just wanted to give a word of caution against doing these, discuss some of the different types of tricks that are a danger to the performer, and maybe suggest some alternatives. So I'm not just trying to wag my finger at people here, but also try to provide some value to you as a performer, because I get why these tricks are used. They are used because of the psychological impact of danger. A magician is an entertainer. Performers, entertainers use danger as an effective way to get people's interest and to excite and delight them. And of course, if you're an adult, you can do whatever you want to do at your own risk. It is your responsibility to consider these things. So first of all is the spike trick. Doing the spike trick, you as the performer, without revealing magician's methods, obviously there is a way that the performer is ensuring that they don't put their hand on the spike, right? So that means the performer is obtaining or retaining secret knowledge, a secret way to know which one has the spike. And so here's the brutal reality. When something goes wrong in a low stakes trick, like let's say I'm going to do a double lift and I accidentally lose my break, or I'm going to control your card and I lose my break, or I lose my control of your card. It's a very low stakes situation. I might get embarrassed, or if I'm a good performer, I might find a way to freestyle remix back into that situation. In a high stakes danger scenario where you lose access or you get confused as to which spot the spike is in, that is terrifying. It's game over, right? And so obviously sitting where I sit, I'm not pretending that performers don't have contingency plans. These are professionals doing high stakes scenarios. But I think this is where my word of caution comes into fellow hobbyists, is that we are looking at our heroes in magic and we're seeing them do really cool things. I was like 14, 15, considering like, oh man, would I do that trick? Would I do that dangerous trick? And of course, magic companies do have their disclaimers, and they're explaining to parents buying tricks for their kids, like, hey, be aware, caution. There's even certain tricks you can't buy if you're under a certain age, and I think that's good that magic companies do that. But as a 13, 14-year-old kid wanting to buy magic, I'm cutting the lawn hoping that the allowance money will enable me to buy certain tricks, and those are marketed tricks coming out, dangerous tricks that are the reduce the options down to one, and it's effectively the spike trick. And I'm interested in that. It's on the same, product page as a top change tutorial or something, right? So that's why I think it's worth mentioning and emphasizing to you if you're a newer magician or you're unaware, no matter how surefire the method is to any of these things, you need to be aware of the risks and that there are alternatives. For me, I remember being really enticed by a download by Dan Sperry for basically an application of this idea where a razor blade was put in an Oreo cookie, and then he would gobble up all the Oreo cookies as the audience member helped him, and then they reduced it down to the last Oreo cookie that had a literal razor blade in it. And so again, I'm sure that had, all the safety disclaimers on that. Dan Sperry's an amazing magician and performer. So again, I'm not trying to blast performers or magicians, but as a young magician, I was like, oh man, should I pick up that one? Should I pick up the cookie razor blade trick? I don't know. So here's the way you can alternatively provide that same type of experience. So the reason the narrowing down to one dangerous option kind of trick is so exciting is because of that danger element. There's risk, there's stakes on the table, right? And those stakes are real, even if you know the secret. So there was a trick I loved that I learned recently that I'll try to find the creator and the name of the trick so that you can seek it out if you're interested. But just to communicate the principle, they took that idea and they kept the stakes, but they made it for something that wouldn't harm themselves or the audience, right? And so in that person's case, they used the audience's credit card. So to be fair, there's still a stipulation of if you don't get your method nailed down right here, there's danger to the audience member's credit card. So you might want to, obviously think about that. But it was a really cool effect where the audience member's credit card was put into an envelope, and then they had all these other blank envelopes, shuffled them around on the table. And then with a pair of scissors and the help of the audience, the performer cut one by one more and more options of envelopes, and then it narrowed down to the one with the credit card in it. So that still communicated the risk idea, but again, it's not risk to someone's health and safety. What was cool about his method was that he was also able to ascertain the digits of the person's credit card throughout the performance as well. So you kind of got 2 hits of magic moments. But even if it's not that trick or that method, that is how you can take these tricks that are really exciting, but maybe pose a risk that you don't want to take. And you can kind of take the idea or the dressing of the structure and the plot and say, okay, if we're not risking my hand going down on a spike, what can we risk and how can I make that into a trick? And so that's how you can get your creativity going with magic, is finding these plots and just kind of and go to the groundwork level of this is the plot. Okay, what props do we do this with and how do we present that? And then that can get you into method, either applying methods or using the creative limitations of that to try to get creative with what you're going to do. So next, going once again from my personal experience, is smoke tricks. So back in the day, magicians have been doing all sorts of things with smoke that were genuinely dangerous to their health because it was using like fire smoke, various versions of smoke that comes from fire. So there's a great one, and I know this sounds like reverse psychology. I have to talk about it because of how cool it is, but I will never do this. You should not do it. But they talk about it on Brian Brushwood's Scam School, Scam Nation, his brand. They share a tutorial of this. Again, don't do it, but it's a classic method where you light a match and then put the match out, and then you're able to breathe out smoke breath without having apparently been actually breathing in any smoke, if that makes sense. So it's really cool, like just like creation of smoke. Dangerous to your health, don't do it. Again, I know it sounds like reverse psychology, but I'm just trying to paint the picture. So fortunately, but still with some caveats, magicians have come up with safer methods of doing smoke tricks, where nowadays we have methods of producing water vapor that are, of course, not the same as smoke that comes from fire. So almost like what you would get out of like a smoke machine on a stage, but of course in a smaller way for close-up performances. That said, to my knowledge, there are still things to consider even with tricks like that. And so there's a magician named Ekaterina, and she did a very deep and thorough dive on this type of smoke device. And so I'll link her video. But for me, in my experience, there was a really popular one called Smoke by Alan Rorison that I still wish I was comfortable doing to this day. But again, in my experience growing up in magic, I really wanted it, and I saw those age limits that it had for purchase or getting, and I knew my parents would probably be hesitant around some of those considerations. And I'm so glad those limits were there, because now being older and knowing what is involved in making that trick happen, I know that that's just not for me. If you're an adult, you can consider what's going on in that trick, but to put it briefly without exposing method, smoke, I mean, when you look at just by performance alone, you can see that smoke is coming out of your mouth. What do you think needs to happen, right? So if those vapors are coming out of your mouth, that means you're getting them into your mouth somehow. And that's just a line that I now draw that I wouldn't have at like 16 years old, when I was just like wanting cool things to happen. So to my knowledge, and again, I encourage you to not take this as professional advice and do your own research on each of these things, I think the safest seeming way to do smoke tricks as a close-up performer is to, produce them from the hands. And there's plenty of seems like there's lots of great options out there where you can do that these days. I just haven't gotten to check into a lot of them due to the price, because they can be pretty expensive. So even those, I would say you're doing at your own risk in terms of being aware of the vapor that you're producing and what's in it and what are the health risks. But those do claim to be safe and safer. And I mean, I've been to a concert where they used a smoke machine on stage, so I would imagine we're okay here. So we've talked about the narrowing choice to a risky end tricks. We've talked about smoke tricks. I wanted to also talk about body tricks, okay? And there's kind of a wide variety. There's plenty of body horror or weird body tricks that are completely safe and really do just create the illusion of bodily harm. A classic is the one that David Blaine did right in front of a hospital, where he seemed to twist his arm all the way around. So kind of in that realm, there's a lot of tricks with the hands that really make it look like you're twisting your fingers out of shape and then bending them back into place. And to my knowledge, a lot of those are just, pure illusion and really create effectively this idea. The ones I'm more hesitant toward are ones where things are coming out of your body, okay? I'll put it that way. And so it's not my intent to harm the marketability of any of these tricks, both these ones and other ones I've talked about in this video. And I trust the professionals that are making these tricks to have considered those potential harms. And so again, this one's just more on my comfort zone. I don't really want to make a tic tac come out of my eye, for example. That's not really my style. Even if that's like 100% safe, I don't want to say anything bad about that trick. That's just my personal comfort level. I just don't want to do that, but it's also not my performance style. And so if you're interested in those, look at what they're providing and look at what precautions they're taking into the manufacturing of a prop like that. You just need to be aware of the risks. So I've already discussed a little bit of the alternatives in terms of like, you can do the David Blaine arm twist, you can do your finger tricks, but this is where I would also recommend as an alternative, the blister trick. So blister illusions, for my comfort level, you'd have to work really hard to actually harm yourself. So long as the prop you are using to create the blister, again, I'm trying to keep secrets here. So long as that is all good, applying that to your skin creates a really cool version of a body modification, if you want to call it that, but it is still safe. Also, if done right, the ash on arm trick is another classic that you can do that's not actually harmful to you. And to make it even safer, you don't have to use fire ashes. You can use other materials that are, as long as it's like dusty, even salt or pepper, right? You can use that to do the ash on arm trick. So what have we learned in this video? Have we learned anything? Other than I'm a scaredy cat? That's not the point. The point is there are these genuinely amazing magic tricks out there that use the idea of danger or the surreal in order to create these effective illusions. But I want you to consider those tricks and make sure that you're making wise choices. So in the case of the first category, we talked about how you can use the plot and the principle to still create that feeling of risk and danger without actually endangering anyone. In the realm of smoke, there's more modern options out there, but you still want to do your research and consider what you're getting into. And then in the case of body tricks, again, there are alternative ones out there that pose no actual risk to you, like a blister effect or ash on arm. And I hope this video could just teach you a few things from a guy who started as a kid in magic and really thought he needed to do all these different things to be a good magician. Now that I'm a little older, I just look at it differently. So that's to wish you a safe and happy Halloween if you're watching this at the time of this video's release. But if the algorithm brought you here months or years later, still encourage you to be safe and enjoy your magic by being safe. So I guess I was your grandma today, but I hope you got something out of this. Let me know what you think about this topic in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.